Less than 8 months after Father Kolbe's heroic death, at a cafe in downtown Krakow, 30 miles from Auschwitz, the Gestapo conducted a mass roundup. More than 24 men were arrested, among them a 21-year-old plant worker named Karol Wojtyła. Although he was carrying an Ausweis card, identifying him as a worker essential to the German war effort, Wojtyła was still arrested. In the end, having the card saved Wojtyła, but most of the men arrested with him were deported to Auschwitz and executed before a firing squad against this wall, just a few feet from the cell window where Father Kolbe had died. The far-reaching consequences of the young plant worker's narrow escape would dramatically alter the course of history. From 1920, the year he was born, inside this small 3-room apartment in Wadowice, Poland, a profound destiny would guide Karol Wojtyła. Tragically, that destiny would include extreme loss and sadness at an early age. When young Karol was only 8, his young mother, Emilia, died suddenly while Karol was at school. Afterwards, friends remember Karol as sad and depressed, robbed of his lightheartedness. And then, only 3 years later, his older brother Edmund, whom Karol idolized, perished after contracting scarlet fever. Karol and his father were left alone. Karol's father, a retired military officer and devout Catholic, was determined to provide his only surviving son with all the love and nurturing he could give. He taught Karol the importance of self-discipline, academics, and hard work. At age 14, Karol discovered theater and literature. Naturally gifted as an actor and inspired by his Polish literary heroes, Karol wrote, directed, and performed his own plays. From childhood on, young Karol displayed a wholesome devotion to God and religion. He possessed tremendous strength and energy, physical, mental, and spiritual. He loved the outdoors, spending as much time as he could skiing, hiking, and kayaking in Poland's breathtaking Carpathian Mountains. In May of 1938, at age 18, he and his father moved to Krakow so Karol could study Polish language and letters at the Jagiellonian University. The college campus was near the Franciscan seminary where Father Kolbe had taught, and only miles from Sister Faustina's convent. Karol completed his first year of college with excellent marks in all his courses, as well as landing lead roles in theatrical productions. The future looked bright for this budding intellectual. But a dark and violent storm was brewing in Europe, and Karol, along with all of Poland, would soon feel its destructive force. The early morning hours of September 1st, 1939, did not begin with the quiet surge of the Vistula River, to which Karol had become accustomed. Instead, he watched as Krakow, the city called the Jewel of Poland, was overrun by invading Nazi tanks and troops. The German occupation of Poland had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the young life of Karol Wojtyła. In a single statement, the German dictator Adolf Hitler commanded his army to eradicate every aspect of Polish life, intellectual, religious, and cultural. Hitler's order, Krakow's theater was to become the battlefield where Karol Wojtyła would fight German oppression, and his weapon would be the power of drama and the spoken word. The young actor helped found an underground theater group to sustain Polish culture. These clandestine performances were the front line of Poland's cultural war. Participation in the underground was an offense punishable by death. It would echo a mysterious, lifelong pattern of close calls, where Karol's life would consistently be spared by God's divine mercy. But while Karol himself eluded death at every turn, still death would invade his life again, as it had done before with his mother and brother. This time it robbed him of his 62-year-old father. It was February 1941, and Karol was only 20. After immersing himself in prayer at Jasna Góra, Karol returned to Krakow, where he soon announced to friends his plans to become a Catholic priest. Joining Krakow's secret seminary during World War II to become a priest had fatal consequences if discovered by the Nazis. But Wojtyła had made up his mind to risk execution, and in October 1942 joined several others in the Archbishop's residence, where he was to pursue his clandestine studies. Years after his ordination to the priesthood in 1946, these early experiences never diminished in Father Wojtyła. Father Karol Wojtyła, at age 38, was installed as an auxiliary bishop of Krakow. At the same time, Sister Faustina's revelations were being looked upon by the Vatican with strong suspicion. Critics believed her revelations overlapped or interfered with existing church devotions.
We in Poland didn't think there was any interference, but the Vatican's opinion was different. Characteristically, Wojtyła, who was, after all, a bishop at the time, had reservations about the Vatican's decision. It only testifies to his greatness that he was mature enough to realize that a mistake had been made.
Faustina had predicted in her diary in 1935, 3 years before her death, that her mission would face seemingly insurmountable obstacles, but that in the end, God would prevail.
The time will come when this work which God so commends will be as though in complete ruin, and suddenly the action of God will come upon the scene with great power which will bear witness to the truth.
Bishop Karol Wojtyła was the instrument of that action of God, referred to in Faustina's prophecy. He exerted his influence and became a powerful advocate of Faustina's Divine Mercy movement.
He gave Sister Faustina's journal to the most prominent dogmatic theologian in Krakow, Professor Ignatius Rosicki. He had been his professor too, and said, "Please examine it from a theological, dogmatic standpoint." Check if there are any errors in it. I know it very well. I was practically with them, and I was absolutely sure that Rosicki would destroy her. I was really sure that he'd laugh at that little journal of hers. I was astonished when Rosicki proclaimed her work free from dogmatic error and deserving of utmost respect.
Wojtyła's continual support over a span of many years, both as bishop and later as cardinal, eventually led to the opening of the official church investigation for Sister Faustina's possible canonization. Wojtyła was convinced that if there was ever an age in desperate need of divine mercy, it was his own. The world was thirsting for Faustina's message, and he knew it. As a spiritual child of wartime Krakow, who had lost many friends to the grisly massacre at nearby Auschwitz, Wojtyła was painfully aware of man's dark side. He understood the more the human conscience succumbs to secularization, the more it loses the very meaning of the word mercy. He knew the world would continue producing atrocities like those of Hitler, unless good people acted against them. Karol's ability to influence others, to create good, was about to make a giant leap. At 9:41 p.m. on August 6, 1978, at Castel Gandolfo, the Pope's summer retreat home, Pope Paul VI died of a massive heart attack. His successor, John Paul I, had been called the September Pope because he died after only serving 1 month in office. Cardinal Wojtyła, who was part of the conclave which elected John Paul I, flew back to Rome for the second time in 6 weeks to elect a new pontiff. At least one person in Rome sensed that Cardinal Wojtyła would participate in this conclave not simply as a spectator, but as a candidate as well. On October 16, 1978, the cardinal princes of the Church of Rome astounded the world when they elected as Pope the 58-year-old Polish cardinal from Krakow. Karol Józef Wojtyła, now John Paul II, the 263rd successor to the Apostle Peter, and the first Polish Pope ever, would be a unique phenomenon in church history. As a statesman of faith, proclaiming divine mercy to the world would be a major thrust of John Paul's pontificate. One of his very first papal writings was an encyclical entitled Rich in Mercy, released in 1981. It is considered one of his greatest spiritual works as Pope. In November of that same year, at a shrine in Collevalenza, Italy, the new pontiff stated publicly his destined role was to bring the era of divine mercy into the world.